Hello, everyone, and welcome to How to Unleash Data-Driven Transformation with Data Mesh. Today's webinar is sponsored by Informatica and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Keith Ward. I'm from Actual Tech Media, and I'm really excited to be your moderator for this especially timely presentation. But before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you. So we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. I'll also be joining our speaker after his presentation for live Q&A, so keep those questions coming. That Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues you might be having. First thing you want to do is a browser refresh if you have audio, video, or slide advancement issues. If any of that doesn't work, let us know in that Q&A panel, and we'll hop right on it and try to help you out. All right, next. In the handouts section of your webinar control panel, you'll find numerous important resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to two outstanding handouts from Informatica. They are 5 ways you can empower teams with data mesh governance and deliver trusted data products and drive better outcomes with data mesh governance. Those have a ton of great information, so I strongly encourage everyone to download those during the event today. Now, we've got some other important handouts there as well, and they include a link to the Gorilla Guide Book Club, where you can get access to our vast library of printed resources on a host of technology topics. You'll also find a link to the ATM Events Center, which has our calendar of upcoming events. We've got some great ones in the pipeline, let me tell you. So you should check that out and sign up today. And with that, let's get going. It's time to get to today's presentation, and I am really excited to introduce you to our speaker today, Sid Rajagopal. He's the Chief Architect of Informatica, and he is rocked and locked and ready to go. So Sid, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Hi everyone, this is Sid Rajagopal, Chief Architect, EMEA LATAM at Informatica. I'm really excited today to talk on the topic and subject of data mesh and how to unleash data-driven transformation with data mesh. In this webinar, let's first look at the why. Why data mesh has gained so much traction in the last few years. Followed by the what some of the key principles of data mesh are, and equally importantly, what some of the key considerations are to really scale your data mesh implementation. We finally end with the how some of our customers are implementing data mesh, and how can Informatica's intelligent data management cloud really help enable and scale your data mesh initiatives. So let's first start with the why. I'd like to first start with an analogy. Imagine a library as you see here, a library with a lot of books, but without enough readers. That library is not of much value. Similarly, a data estate with a lot of data, but without enough people using and leveraging that data on a day-to-day basis to use for their data-driven insights isn't much of value, even if you have petabytes of data. Also, from a library perspective, you need to think of various personas. Firstly, a librarian. Typically, this has been a central body. So you go to a librarian in the reception who will help to guide you towards the different sections of the library. But the real competition or differentiation would be if there would be a librarian in each section of the library, where the librarian really is an expert in that section. For instance, a librarian in the history section who really knows the books around history and can really suggest intuitively and can provide recommendations to the readers. This is also how you need to think of your data ecosystem, to move away from a central data and analytics body towards business-oriented domains, which is a key theme in data mesh. The second is that of a reader. As said before, that's the key persona for which the library even exists. But if you kind of double-click on the reader, there may be different kinds of readers. Maybe, for instance, a reader who is just interested to find the answer to a particular question in a book, or a reader who is just interested to glance through the covers of the book, or a reader who really wants to read each and every word in the book, or a reader who's just interested in the highlights of the book so that they can get the key nugget of information from this book. So the library really needs to have different ways to cater to these different kinds of readers. And finally, you have the organizer. This is often an underlooked part of the library, but the organizers are really ensuring that the books are kept in a consistent fashion across different sections in the library. Very much like how a data governance body in a data organization ensure there's standardized process, people, and data elements in the organization. So with this, I hope you find an easy analogy with the different personas which map towards the data ecosystem that you may have in the enterprise. Let's then look at some of the key drivers as well. As reported in a recent survey from IDC, over $290 billion are being spent globally on technology and services. 42% of enterprises report that this data is being underutilized in the organization. So very similar to the library analogy, where a lot of books exist and a lot of money is being spent on the books, but there are not enough readers of the books. The statistic on the right is even more astounding, where only 12% of organizations are really connecting the data between departments. Often there's a lot of nuggets in this space where you can really connect and associate different personas like a customer or a supplier between different departments in the organization. Because from a business perspective, the situation has rapidly evolved, both due to effects such as of COVID-19, of economical situations, of the variety of competition that's entered. It's really essential to make better decision-making at the same time at a really rapid speed. However, this decision-making also needs to be across the organization rather than be done only by particular data departments. And there's really need to focus on efficiency and reuse. Because from a value perspective, we really need to go towards much more a decision velocity from just data generation. Again, going back to the library analogy. From a consumer perspective, you need to really provide personalized, immersive experiences at the same time ensuring that the data is protected, because that is also a huge theme ongoing around privacy and regulations. And finally, from a cloud perspective, as enterprises really go towards a cloud-first architecture and adoption, of course, a lot of value and innovation is provided by this, but there needs to be careful consideration also be made on the economics to do with a cloud-based business, which is again linked to the efficiency and reuse part of things. So I hope with this, you get a good context around the why data mesh was really required and why there's a radical change to move away from the legacy or some of the previous architectural patterns in play. With that, let's move towards the what. So what are some of the key principles of data mesh? I'll start at a very high level. Data mesh is essentially a distributed operating model, distributed being a key word, to really be able to find, leverage, and build data assets. So what it means is you move away from that central librarian in the book analogy towards a distributed set of librarians who are experts in their business themes. So in summary, it means essentially going away from a centralized analytics or data team towards a business-centered, domain-oriented team who works on creating data products, as we'll see soon. With that, let's look at the different principles of data mesh. The first being domain-oriented, as I said before, really decentralizing and distributing the creation and curation of data assets. These domains typically have like a boundary defined to them, and they can work within that boundary in an independent fashion. To take an example, you may have a domain like a sales domain, and every data asset or data product related to sales will be created and curated by the sales domain. However, if you just leave this principle alone, you have the risk of each domain completely working in isolation. So to really promote that there's collaboration, there's the concept of data products or data as a products, where there's need for each domain to curate and share data products, which can be consumed either within the domain or across the domains. And these data products have a standardized look and feel, very similar to a real product, with a lot of aspects such as data quality design, metadata and discovery, security and privacy, as well as ensuring that the data product is built with different consumers and consumer patterns in mind. Similar, again, going back to that reader analogy I mentioned before, for catering different kinds of readers. The other big aspect, of course, is people in all of this. You need to ensure that people in the domain work in collaboration both within the domain and across domain. This is where the concept of federated governance plays a key role. There's both a centralized and a decentralized aspect to this. So, for example, there's common frameworks, there's a center of excellence potentially, and collaboration aspects built more from a centralized perspective. But each domain in principle are allowed to operate and govern their data assets on an autonomous fashion. So promoting a federated governance model. And finally, there's the concept of a self-serve data platform, where to ensure that domains don't need to worry about the underlying data infrastructure gets built as a scalable cloud-based infrastructure that can be reused and repurposed for different domains. The other aspect here is a governed data marketplace to ensure that data products can be collaborated in an end-to-end process. There needs to be a data sharing governed area like a data marketplace to promote that exchange between a data producer and a data consumer. Which brings me to this flow, because data mesh is essentially bringing data producers and data consumers together, whether they are part of the same domain or of different domains. So it's really essential to also think of the end-to-end process from a data producer and a data consumer point of view. At a high level, a data producer is creating, curating, and publishing data products, applying some standardized governance policies, creating data quality rules, and applying a data contract. If some of these terms are not very familiar, we'll kind of dig deeper into these in the next section. But for now, let's see that being part of the process as a data producer needs to be able to find and create and publish the data products, which of course then needs to be leveraged by a data consumer. So again, agility is of key. So a data consumer should be able to quickly and find the right data product and attach that with the right business priority and use cases in mind. At the same time, the data consumer should be able to choose the right data delivery mechanism based on the technology or the speed of the data or the type of use case they want to adopt it for. And finally, there needs to be a feedback loop so that the data consumer is able to relay back what went well and what didn't go well from the usage of that data product. So to support the data producers and data consumers, there needs to be some kind of standardized capability with aspects such as tools and technology, security at an enterprise level, onboarding and training for different kinds of domains, data producers and data consumers, and perhaps also some kind of enterprise data, which can be reused across the different domains or different data producers. So with that aspect in mind, I hope you see the initial part of the principles behind the data mesh. So let's kind of double click into the what. What I really call here as being the ABCD of data mesh, or some of the key considerations to really scale your data mesh implementation. We'll also look at how IDMC, or Informatica's Intelligent Data Management Cloud, and the capabilities in it can really help to adopt and scale your data mesh initiative. So let's first start with an introduction of Informatica's Intelligent Data Management Cloud, or IDMC in short. So IDMC contains a set of composable API-first data management capabilities, which has an integrated metadata as its core underlying capability. This serves, from a data mesh perspective, both the data producer and the data consumer personas, where you have capabilities to aid a data producer like a data catalog for ease of discovery, data engineering and API integration for building your data products, data quality and master data management for providing the right capabilities to standardize the data products from a data management perspective, governance and privacy to ensure that there's people and processes which can be connected to the data products, and coming towards the data marketplace, which becomes that data sharing portal to facilitate exchange of data and information between the producers and the consumers. The other huge aspect of IDMC is the capability where all of these services can be built in a centralized control plane, but can be executed in a decentralized fashion based on the infrastructure of your choice, whether you are on an on-premise estate, a cloud-first estate, or a hybrid ecosystem. IDMC can execute at runtime on the best of the breed ecosystems, leveraging the compute and the storage and the analytical capabilities they provide. The other huge aspect in IDMC is CLAIRE, which is our AI-powered metadata intelligence and automation capabilities, which really helps scale this to hundreds of products and domains across the enterprise. We'll kind of delve into CLAIRE in a little bit. So let's first start now getting into the ABCDs. First with the A of data mesh, which I call as autonomy in a controlled fashion. So as we explained before, data mesh really needs to facilitate data producers and consumers, but there also needs to be the set of standardized capabilities or building blocks, as I call it, to facilitate either persona. So for instance, as data producers leverage and build a data product using various data management capabilities, such as data cataloging, integration, publishing, governance, mastering, etc., they can leverage a set of standardized services. For example, a set of connectivity out of the box, access control out of the box, CI/CD frameworks to really facilitate a standardized DevOps capability. Other libraries such as data quality libraries so that they don't have to start from scratch building data quality rules. Integration templates so that based on the type of data product being built, the right integration pattern and a template can be provided to be used as a plugin. Or enterprise master or reference data, which they can use as a building block to build the final data product. Similarly, from a data consumer standpoint, the starting point is the data sharing or data marketplace portal to really understand the data product. But from here on, the data contract can be started to be established with the data producer, where aspects such as the terms of use, the purpose why the data consumer wants to use the data product, the kind of data quality expected, the kind of data refresh expected, and other similar SLAs can be coordinated with the data producer. Another key aspect, of course, is insights. The data consumer really would like to have insights to really understand how this data product is being used by other consumers, what are some of the key trust and quality scores behind it, etc. So essentially in this theme, I'm really promoting the use of a standardized capability with an autonomy in place. So to again use an analogy, I think of this like raising kids, where of course you need to give freedom to the kids to learn and experience things on their own, essentially the autonomy aspect of it. But you need to have a constant eye on the kids so that they're not getting into any huge risk or dangers. That's where the controlled fashion and providing the building blocks is really key. Before we move to the next B part of the data mesh, let's have another theme on A. That is automation and scalability. As I mentioned before, IDMC provides CLAIRE capabilities, which is our AI-powered metadata intelligence and automation. This can really help scale and automate a lot of the data management aspects within the data mesh, providing a lot of recommendations and insights to your users, such as sourcing suggestions, such as providing mapping recommendations, for instance, as well as really automating several capabilities. For instance, auto-classifying your data elements. So you immediately see on a data product whether, for instance, there's some privacy-sensitive element involved or not. Or data quality automation, where data quality rules can be built in natural language and can be applied in all places where there's a technical metadata available for that particular term. There are various capabilities possible with CLAIRE, and all of these are enabling to scale your data mesh ecosystem. With that, let's move to the B. I call B as being the balance between growth and standardization. There's, as I explained before, two elements towards data mesh. One is, of course, growth, where you really want to build more and more data products, which can be used and scaled by different data consumers. But the other fine balance is standardization. As said before, unless you build these building blocks, you will not be able to really scale growth beyond a point. So it's really essential, very similar to how you are scaling products or physical products. You need to have this right balance between when you want to have more and more use cases onboarded for growth and building new data products, and when is it a good time to standardize some of these so that your data producers and consumers can leverage a lot of these standard capabilities to grow faster in the future. So I hope with that, we looked at the B aspect of data mesh. So let's move to C, which I call as culture shift and collaboration. This is where, as important as the technology elements of data mesh are, data mesh is first a cultural and organizational shift, where you really need to ensure that everyone in the organization, including your business and your leadership, is able to move towards such a decentralized way of working. A key aspect to promote all of this is collaboration, of course. But I feel collaboration really starts with transparency, where it's really understood and able to really understand the data product details. As you see in the picture here, this is an example from our data marketplace, where a data consumer can quickly come in, look at a particular data product, really understand the details behind it, such as the purpose of use, the data elements behind the data product, the kind of ownership or stewardship behind the data product, the data quality scores, as well as other aspects like how many other consumers are using it and what are some of their reviews and ratings behind it. This kind of a transparency capability really helps to promote culture shift and really adopt such a data mesh initiative. So finally, let's move to the D of the ABCD of data mesh, which I call as data access management. So if you again look at that end-to-end process of a data producer and a data consumer with some standardized capabilities, one of the key standardized capabilities is data access management. Imagine if you have hundreds of data products with thousands of data consumers over time. You do not want to figure out for each and every consumer what is the level of access they should be getting the data for. This is also where different aspects may come in. So not just the kind of role of the data consumer, but the purpose of usage of a data consumer may also determine their data access. So with a policy-based data access, where, for instance, you look at defining policies at a central level, but executing these policies in a distributed fashion can really promote data access. This is where Informatica's IDMC, with our recent acquisition of Privitar, can really help scale your data access management. So to summarize the ABCDs, we look at autonomous controlled fashion, where building standardized capabilities with a capability such as IDMC, an API-based composable architecture, leveraging automation with our CLAIRE capabilities, promoting culture and collaboration with transparency from a data marketplace kind of functionality, and data access management with our data policies, data governance, and the recent acquisition of Privitar can really help scale your data mesh initiatives. With that, let's move towards the how. Let's look at a customer story. The customer in play here is Gilead. Gilead is an American biopharmaceutical company based in California, has over 17,000 employees across 38 countries, and have one common mission: to create a healthier world for all people. They are really looking at life-threatening diseases and how to provide therapeutics for those. Gilead decided to adopt a data mesh architecture enabled with a data marketplace and an AI and analytics infrastructure leveraging Informatica and AWS as the cloud ecosystem. This is being leveraged for various capabilities to provide new insights in an accelerated way, promote drug development, improve data literacy across the organization, and really enable cross-enterprise use cases. The way Gilead tackled their data mesh implementation is the following. where they first connected all their business objectives, because after all, a data mesh implementation is really driven by business itself. The scale of business and the type of requirements from a business perspective should drive data mesh implementations than the other way around. So they connected their business requirements and objectives to various technical strategies and landscapes that they already had, and identified a first set of use cases to deep dive an MVP for a data mesh. They then built a lean value tree built on the core principles of data mesh and connected that to the key inputs and the use cases identified. From this, they created a value map which connects these business strategy to real data mesh and data capabilities. Then they really built outcomes with an end-to-end business use case where the data product design, the end-to-end process of the data products from the producers to the consumers was built. A capability mapping was also built to be easily able to connect these different elements from a data perspective. This then built the roadmap towards really scaling their data mesh initiative, where they identified data product and platform capabilities and chartered that in a multi-year program. Let's look at the architecture that Gilead built to really help scale this data mesh initiative. I really love the way they've divided the architecture into different planes, starting from the self-serve infrastructure plane built on an AWS ecosystem, leveraging infrastructure as code templates and various other templates and standardized capabilities to really scale and provide the right infrastructure as a foundation. To the data product experience plane, where the end-to-end experience of a data product, including providing the creation of data products, transformation of the data products, leveraging aspects such as master data management, data pipelines, connectivity, access control to really serve different use cases was built. And the cherry on the top being the experience plane to really promote collaboration, which is called as the mesh experience plane, leveraging the data marketplace and the data product catalog, also built with a strong layer of data product observability, where the end-to-end data pipelines and the quality of data, the schema of data, the classification and the shape of data can be proactively identified and informed to the right stakeholders. The data product then gets distributed in different formats, leveraging an API-first approach. So to summarize, Gilead really used these multiple planes from the self-service infrastructure, data product, and mesh experience plane, leveraging a best-of-suite approach with Informatica's IDMC and AWS as their cloud ecosystem. Now that we've looked at the different principles, the considerations behind data mesh, let's tie it all back to the original analogy with the library. The librarian here corresponds to moving from a centralized library towards librarians in different sections of the library who are much more knowledgeable in each section. This corresponds to the concept of domains and decentralization in a data mesh, with a role known as data product owners corresponding to the librarian. As said before, there can be different kinds of readers. That's also the case with the consumers' personas in a data mesh. Different consumers may have different needs from a data mesh. And from the organizer perspective, now we've learned the concept of a federated governance. So it's essential to also have standardization across the library, but at the same time, allow the organizers to arrange books in their best fashion in the individual section, where it makes most sense. Let's summarize with 5 key takeaways I have from my data mesh learnings. The first, not to forget that data mesh is first a social and organizational perspective. It really requires a change from a top-down business-first approach with strong emphasis on change management and a business buy-in before technology decisions. The second is not to boil the ocean. Start small and grow with your data mesh initiatives. Focus on that balance, as I said, between growth and standardization. It's important, therefore, to identify the right set of first domains and use cases, which may give the most value in adoption and scaling. The third, the balance between growth and standardization, to ensure that there's more and more building blocks, libraries created so that both data producers and data consumers find it an obvious choice and such an accelerated way that they always leverage the data mesh approach rather than even thinking of any kind of other implementation or pseudo approach. The fourth, an ecosystem play. This is where it's essential to see that no single technology vendor can implement or resolve a data mesh. It really requires a best of suit approach where multiple ecosystems and technology layers are in play. But it's equally important to ensure that there's the right amount of decoupling and integration between these components. The components itself may change over time, but the overall ecosystem architecture should remain the same, as seen in the Gilead's data plane approaches. And finally, often ignored, the role of data and data management, as well as the role of master and reference data, to really identify which of these capabilities should be centralized and which of these should be completely federated. For instance, reference data can be an example of centralizing because reference data might be used in the same way across different domains. So that can be a really good example, such as country codes or other kind of code lookup tables can be centralized. So really identifying these data management capabilities and identifying where they belong is essential. So with that, I hope you found this webinar useful. Please feel free to ask questions, as well as join our community and user groups, attend one of our upcoming AI and architecture summits across the globe, and refer for more details to what I said in our huge array of data architecture center, where you can find a bunch of reference architectures, blogs, white papers, and different kinds of ebooks. I really hope you found this session valuable. Again, please feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. What a great presentation. You know what? I love that last slide. I think I'm just going to leave it up here while we get to some Q&A. Thank you so much for that, Sid. I want to remind everyone about the great handouts and the QR codes and everything. You got plenty of time to connect with Informatica from these various ways. And so I'm just going to, again, leave it up while we go through your great questions. Sid, I wanted to say first, I love the analogy of the library. When I was growing up, libraries were one of my favorite places to be, and they still are in a lot of ways. And that analogy just made it so clear, you know, at a high conceptual level, how this works. So I just thought that was a fantastic analogy. So you ready for some questions? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's dive in then. The audience has been submitting some excellent questions for us. So first one I have for you today, Sid, is how does Informatica leverage automation to enable data mesh?
Yeah, it's a great question. I kind of touched a little bit upon it during the presentation, but to maybe expand it a little bit. Also, you see the middle in the act now, which is the AI and Architecture Summit, right? So AI is a critical piece, and we've all been hearing the generative AI chat GPT phase. I think that's a great summit to attend to know more about how Informatica is innovating with automation and AI, not just in a data mesh context, but in any data management context. But to give a bit more of an answer to the question, we are really innovating with AI with our Claire capabilities, and we've got kind of two lenses with Claire out now. One is what we call as our Claire Copilot, which is really aiding a federated setup like a data mesh, as I said before, to really aid the different kind of personas, as I use the library analogy, but in a data mesh context, to provide them with kind of standard toolkits, the recommendations, the user interface to really be able to scale their data mesh initiative. The other lens of Claire is what we recently announced as Claire GPT, which is making the interaction even more seamless by providing a generative AI kind of chat interface where you could even ask questions to Claire GPT like, hey, what's the metadata behind some of my reports? Where can I find my data products? What are the most commonly used data products in the data mesh landscape, etc. Right? So it's really making the interaction and scalability to a next level with these capabilities.
Right. Yeah. AI is really becoming, gosh, in many ways, a requirement, especially for something like this, it seems. Okay. We've got a cool, interesting question about kind of process here for you
Mhm.
next, Sid. So, an attendee wants to know, how are organizations scaling data domains and data products in the data mesh?
That's a really good question. Each first, as I mentioned again in the five key aspects at the end, data mesh is first a social and an organizational change before a technology change, right? So that's the first aspect, is how do you, from a top down and as well as from a bottom up perspective, change to your current setup towards a data mesh structure. And there are kind of two ways of looking at it, right? Where one, today the setup is very centralized, and you then need to know how you can really scale to federate it to different domains where business takes a lot more of the data ownership. And the other perspective is where you're completely isolated today. We have a lot of organizations we work with who are, you know, grown through acquisitions, where the complete setup is federated. And in those cases, data mesh is really bringing scalability by providing some kind of standardization, providing those building blocks so that these kind of acquired companies can still work seamlessly, provide a common lens towards their data and business strategy. Uh, Also, some ideas also I've heard from customers is to really think of that data product itself, right? Think of the data contracts behind the data products. We've even had customers who are continuously measuring the usage of data products and even bringing them off the shelf, right? Very similar to how you would think of real products. If a real product doesn't work in the store of a retail aisle, you'll probably replace it with a different version or a different brand of the product. So that kind of thinking is really required, where you're not, you know, tied down to the data product structure and use cases, but really looking at metrics to track usage, consumption, and value driven, compared to the costs, of course, to scale this, because there is, of course, costs associated towards a federated data mesh setup.
Okay, and definitely related to that is a question that from an attendee that I imagine a lot of us have. For those of us in established infrastructures and data centers, and they've got everything set up, how do you transition into data mesh architecture from existing architecture? Does it require a rip and replace, or what exactly do you think?
That's a great question, actually. So that's I wish there was a silver bullet answer to this, but just let me give a few perspectives. Uh,
Sure.
of course, the answer is it depends, because it depends on what is your current estate. As I said in the previous answer, it depends where you are set up as an organization today. But at the same time, I think there needs to be a careful evaluation towards what makes most sense. It doesn't make sense, in my opinion, to completely rip apart what you've built today. So, in most cases, I would say the answer is to look at the best way you can package the current data assets that you have today into a much more seamless process, as I said, from a data producer, consumer, and a standardized capability, and create the data products out of them. Having said that, it can depend also on how that is being used today. If that is really having data which is not up to the right quality or the right governance, then of course those aspects first needs to be tweaked and, you know, re-architected before data products can be placed. So it's this fine balance between putting products on the shelf for consumption versus, you know, fixing everything in the supply chain, as we call it, before you put those products on the shelf, right? So there isn't a golden answer, I'm afraid, but it, I think, depends on
Yeah.
what really is working today with the current architecture.
And I think it's worth pointing out, Sid, that even if redoing your data and cleaning it up and recategorizing it and all of these things, that's going to be potentially a lot of work and effort. But when you look at the potential benefits on the
Mhm.
other side, wow, they more than balance out and make any sort of effort and time and manpower worth it, you know, for what you get when you're putting in good data and really being able to
Indeed.
leverage that. So yeah, definitely something to consider. Okay, next the question of clarification, which is really good because I see this sort of confusion a lot. So attendee wants to know, what what is the difference between data mesh and data fabric?
Okay, that's really a question asked a lot of times. Often these two terms are used interchangeably. So let's kind of hopefully get this clarified once and for all. Data mesh, I hope now it's clear. Hopefully my talk today made the concept of data mesh clear. It's essentially a framework, as I said before, first a social and a cultural and an organizational first framework to getting towards a decentralized way of creating data products, federated governance to support that, and really having a self-service infrastructure. The data fabric is probably more laid to the technology aspect of it, where you have various components of a technology landscape, typically built from a core metadata framework supported with a knowledge graph, really providing the brain to power a data mesh or any other framework or architecture, right? So these are kind of can work seamlessly with each other, but are kind of independent with each other. So to recap, data mesh being much more a federated organization first kind of a framework, and data fabric much more being a technology automation framework supporting a data mesh or any other data architecture.
Okay. Great clarification, and something that is really necessary. As you say, I've seen the same kind of confusion. I've had some of the same confusion myself in the past, so I really appreciate that. Well, that's all the questions I think we have time for today. Sid, I want to thank you so much for that wonderful presentation that you had, and for all of those insights in the Q&A, and for updating us on what Informatica is doing, and just so much great knowledge that I think was imparted today. Thank you again for being here with us.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to remind our attendees one more time about those great handouts. You got another minute to download those again. They're in the handouts tab, and they are 5 ways you can empower teams with data mesh governance, and a PDF download, deliver trusted data products and drive better outcomes with data mesh governance. Those are both available in our handouts tab, and you got another few seconds to get to those. So I strongly encourage you once again to take advantage of those free resources. And with that, everyone, we're wrapped for today. On behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Informatica for making this event possible. I want to thank Sid for everything here today, for the fantastic presentation, for the insightful answers in the Q&A. I want to thank all of you for attending. I want to thank you for spending part of your day with us, for your engagement here today, and I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. So that concludes today's event, everyone. You can get back to your day. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you in the next one.